On October 31st, 1992, the BBC aired one of the most controversial TV broadcasts of all time. Imagine tuning into one of your favourite TV channels on Halloween night, expecting a spooky but harmless TV show, and then realising you're witnessing something far more sinister. In 1992, the BBC did the unexpected. It terrified millions and caused outrage across the UK. But what exactly happened on that fateful night? Today, we're looking at writer Stephen Volk originally conceived Ghostwatch as a 6-part TV drama, where each week some type of paranormal activity would happen, which would all come to a head in the last episode, where all hell breaks loose. At the pitch meeting though, the BBC didn't want to do the 6-part drama, so they suggested to do something else with the idea. That idea was to turn it into a 90-minute special. This was when Volk suggested they do the last episode of the proposed drama series and have it all look like an actual live broadcast, fronted by well-known TV presenters. Michael Parkinson, one of the greatest interviewers of all time, was selected to be the main presenter, as the BBC thought having Parkinson as the face of the show would throw the audience off from it being some run-of-the-mill normal paranormal show. It worked wonders. The show was filmed at BBC Elstree Studios, 6 weeks after the on-location shoot for the house, where the activity was taking place. This was done so the studio audience and also the presenters would have something to react to when something happened. Behind the scenes, the BBC were worried about the public, and they didn't know how they would react to such a show. They toyed with a few ideas. One was to cancel the show entirely, and the other idea was to put credits at the start of the show, including a written by credit and also the production company that made the show. This is what they ultimately went with. The show went out as planned on October 31st, 1992, presented as a live TV special.
Now on BBC One, Screen One presents an unusual and sometimes disturbing film marking Halloween. Over the centuries there have been countless reports of ghosts and ghouls, but the line between fact and fiction has always been unclear. Using the modern idiom of the outside broadcast, Michael Parkinson, Sarah Green, Mike Smith and Craig Charles star in Ghostwatch.
The show follows a team of reporters investigating a haunted house in Northolt, London, where a family was being tormented by a malevolent spirit known as Pipes. Throughout the show, Pipes would be visible to eagle-eyed viewers. Cutting back and forth between the studio, Michael Parkinson would speak with actress Gillian Bevan, who was playing Dr. Lynn Pascoe. This was another look folks, this is a well-known TV actress, so this isn't real. Just to let the public know that they were watching a horror drama. But somehow, this seemed to have gone over nearly the entire nation's heads. Throughout the broadcast, a telephone number was shown on screen. This was done so that viewers could call in and discuss the episode, but it also added to the realism of it being a live show. If the caller was able to get through, a message was played to them stating that the show was just that, a fictional TV show. They were then able to talk about their own ghost encounters and stories. But about 25 minutes into the show, the BBC switchboard started to get bombarded by viewers. During the house segments, if you were quick enough, you'd be able to see Pipes. This is what the majority of the phone calls that were clogging up the BBC phone lines were, as viewers were trying to get through to say that they spotted something. During the show, Parkinson would take calls and they would talk about what they saw on screen. However, these phone calls were in fact members of the crew, and even director Leslie Manning played the role of Mary Christopher. The show got more chaotic as it drew to a close. The scenes of the house got more and more intense, which involved the children of the house speaking in demonic voices. Eerie sounds and items were being smashed and doors opening and slamming shut. The house scene finished when the presenter, looking for one of the children, gets dragged into a cupboard with the door slamming shut behind her. It then cut back to the studio, where all hell is broken loose. Camera equipment starts malfunctioning, lights blowing out, and a strong gust of wind as Parkinson speaks to the audience in a demonic voice as it cuts to black. The show had finished. The nation was hooked. The nation were also terrified. As soon as the show had finished, the BBC phone lines lit up as over 1 million people rang the number, ranging from people who were irate and frightened. One of the callers was even Michael Parkinson's own mother. The show had caused outrage on Halloween night 1992. Stephen Volk had succeeded in what he wanted to do. Less than 10 hours later, as newspapers were hitting the stands, Ghostwatch was splashed all over the front pages. The entire nation were petrified of the show, and the media ran with it. The BBC were criticised and even lost the public support for them due to this broadcast. TV shows ranging from the morning news all the way to the evening talk shows. Everyone was angry at the BBC, and they made sure they knew it.
Ghostwatch. My 11-year-old son was left shaking and physically sick after 10 minutes.
The BBC should be locked up for such a prank. I guessed halfway through it was a hoax, but people do live in haunted houses.
I have a helpline for people in distress, and I received over 300 calls. In fact, I thought Ghostwatch was brilliant, but it was introduced as a drama, and many of the people I helped did not understand that drama means fiction.
In February of 1994, the British Medical Journal published a report describing how Ghostwatch induced PTSD in children due to watching the show. They state that these are the first ever reports of PTSD caused by a TV show. When this was put out, it had a number of responses, which described 4 more cases with children aged between 11 and 14. The worst news to come out after the show was the death of Martin Denham, an 18-year-old but with a mental age of 13, who sadly took his own life 5 days after the show had aired. The home he lived in with his parents always had central heating issues, which caused the pipes throughout the house to knock. After watching the show, Martin linked the banging and the knocking he hears regularly to the character of Pipes from Ghostwatch. This caused him to be scared and worried beyond belief. Martin left a note for his parents which read, "If there are ghosts, I will be with you, always as a ghost." Martin's parents blamed the BBC for the tragedy. According to his parents, Martin was obsessed with the show and made a complaint to the Broadcasting Standard Commission. However, their complaint was rejected, but the High Court granted them permission for a judicial review, which required the BSC to hear their complaint. After they heard the complaint, the BSC ruled that the BBC had a duty to do more than simply hint at the deception it was practicing on the audience. In Ghostwatch, there was a deliberate attempt to cultivate a sense of menace. The ruling also said that the show was distressing and graphic and aired way too soon after the 9 p.m. watershed. The producers of Ghostwatch argued that the show had aired during a drama slot. It was also recognisable as fiction to the vast majority of the nation, and that if they put any more disclaimers or announced outright that this was a fictional programme, it would have ruined the effect. The BBC did note, though, that if they had anticipated the audience reaction, they would have made it clear that the show was fake. After the ruling, the BBC issued only an apology. Ghostwatch left an undeniable legacy on both TV and horror. Due to the immense backlash the show received, the BBC has never aired the show again on its flagship channels. Ghostwatch has been coined as the first ever fake horror documentary, and the show was inspired and credited for the direction of fake horror documentaries which would come out within the next decade. A rumour went around for a number of years saying that the makers of the hit found footage movie The Blair Witch Project watched the show, and that's what gave them the idea for making their own movie. Eduardo Sanchez, one of the co-directors and writers of the hit movie, cleared this rumour up. Sanchez appeared on the Diminishing Returns podcast and stated that they were not made aware of Ghostwatch until after Blair Witch had been released. Another person the show influenced is British illusionist Darren Brown, who told the creator Stephen Volk that the show inspired him to make his own TV hoax, Seance. This is what Stephen Volk had to say. "In fact, I have met Darren Brown, and I have it on his authority that he was inspired by Ghostwatch when he made his TV program Seance. I'm very proud that he rates the show I wrote. I am a great fan of his programs, in which, like Ghostwatch, he asks us to question the things we trust. In 2006, Volk released Dark Corners, a story collection, with a sequel to Ghostwatch as one of them. Titled 3110, it tells the tale of Volk taking part in the 10th anniversary edition of Ghostwatch in 2002. He visits the studio that was used to film the original, and it has been sealed off ever since due to the consequences of pipes. The story was later selected for the year's Best Fantasy and Horror 2007 20th Annual Collection. It was also nominated for the Horror Writers Association of the Bram Stoker Award and the British Fantasy Award for Best Short Story of 2006. It is now 32 years later, and Ghostwatch is still relevant because it was ahead of its time. In an age where misinformation can spread quickly, it serves as a reminder of just how powerful TV can be. It also proved how horror can be used to tap into real, social fears, not just ghosts and ghouls, but the fear of losing control over what's real and what's not. To me, Ghostwatch is one of the greatest 90 minutes of TV ever created. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what you thought about Ghostwatch. Was it too extreme for the BBC to do, or has it found its place in horror history? Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss any of the horror retrospective videos that we release. Until next time, stay critical, stay safe. You can watch our other horror retrospectives here.